Good evening. Good evening. My name is Joel Allen. I'm the director of the McGovern Center, and it's my great privilege, and I truly mean this, it's a real privilege of my life to be able to represent the McGovern family, and George particularly, and to do what I can do to kind of extend the McGovern legacy. So one of the ways I like to think about that, there's a lot of different things we could do to extend the McGovern legacy. The biggest themes of his life were, don't fight dumb wars and feed the world. Those are like George's two big things. Make sure people have enough to eat all over the world. And so George had those kind of visions, but my question was, how would George resonate with depolarization as kind of a theme? Because we had begun thinking that in this day and age, depolarization would be a very important topic. There's so much polarization in our world. There's so much tension over different topics and ideas that we feel strongly about and disagree strongly with one another, and it can tear apart communities. And so my question was, what would George think about that? And I have a simple little way to do this. It's just my little intuitive guide here. So I just picture George in the room here. Let's say he's sitting over here on the front row, and he knows that what we're doing here is like in his name, or it's his legacy. We're wanting to extend George's legacy. I can see him smiling. George is here, somehow George is here smiling. And just to make sure about this, I did sit down with his daughter, Ann, who lives in Sioux Falls, and explained this whole thing. And would George really have been interested in depolarization? And she's like, oh yeah. So I think that's a yes. So it's great to have you here. Let's start with just a brief prayer, and then we'll continue. Lord, thank you for this time that we can think and strive to understand one another. Give us grace, give us courage to recognize that all of us are your children. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. So it's good to have you here again, as I said before, and the theme of the McGovern Center for the last few years has been being involved in depolarization. We're a part of an international agency called Braver Angels. And I'm a member of also a group called Braver Scholars. And the McGovern Center is a part of the Braver Network. So we got Braver coming several different directions here, and a lot of involvement with Braver Angels. That is the organization that designed the style of debate we're doing. So the debate that we do is not a debate like by the way, George was an excellent debater. He coached debate here at Dakota Wesleyan. Debate changed George's life. He was painfully shy and wouldn't even say boo in public. And yet when he got involved in debate, he became a lion of debate. He'd travel all over the Midwest region debating people, and was a national champion debater. But this is not that style of debate. This is not a win-lose type of debate, or what you could call a finite game. This is an infinite game. And in this game, we're going to we win the debate if, when we walk out the door, we understand the issues better and we like the people we've been discussing them with. If you develop trust, we win, right? And trust has been just eroded in our nation, and not only in institutions, but in one another. And so the goal of this debate is, when you walk out of these doors, I want you to feel a greater sense of trust and appreciation for people that you disagree with. That's the goal. So how does this work? Let's look at these slides. We're going to talk about immigration and amnesty. And I just have to start off with this picture, just so you know a little bit more about George McGovern. That's his famous dog, Ursa. Everybody loved Ursa, almost as much as George, but not quite that much. And this is George in Rome. George, toward the end of his life, was hired by the World Food Program to be an ambassador. He traveled all over the world representing the World Food Program, which is, by the way, they won the Nobel Prize in 2000, the Nobel Peace Prize. The World Food Program did. And so we claimed that for George, because George was the real genius behind the starting of the World Food Program. So this event is sponsored by the McGovern Center, by Braver Angels, by Dakota Wesleyan University, and all of those good things. So let's go to the next slide. This is just a little kind of a thought that I came across a while back, and this is a passion for civil dialogue. Being taught to avoid talking about politics and religion has led to a lack of understanding of politics and religion. What we should have been taught was how to have a civil conversation about a difficult topic. How many of you agree with that? Yeah, so thank you. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, the resolution for tonight's debate is this. Resolved, the United States should implement a comprehensive immigration reform that includes a pathway to citizenship, which we'd call amnesty, for undocumented immigrants who meet certain criteria, including residency duration and lack of serious criminal activity. Does that make sense to everyone? So it's basically saying we ought to have some avenue for people who are here illegally to become legal and become and to be on the to be decriminalized, right, and to be able to have at least access to a green card or the move toward citizenship, a pathway to citizenship. Okay, next slide. So here's how these debates work. You have several values. This is not a competitive debate. It's an infinite game, not a finite game. So, and you say what you truly believe. So nobody should get up here and like make a case against something when they don't really believe it, just to kind of score a point or whatever. I don't know why anybody would do that. Although people often you need to know how to argue both sides of a debate, but that's not the kind of debating we're doing here. This is a passionate search for the truth. So you can't debate a position you don't agree with. This is only not allowed. You have to believe what you're debating in. So curiosity is good, contempt is bad in the values that we want to develop. We need to be curious about each other because that builds trust, and contempt is bad. It erodes trust. Be willing to change your mind. So we all need to go, do a little clicker here or something, and okay, I'm going to learn something new, and I'm going to change my mind if what my previous beliefs aren't working for me anymore. So be willing to change your mind. Oh, we've got one more. Can we go back, Pedro? Okay, thank you. Collective search for the truth. We already done that. Can we go forward? Okay, thanks. So suggestions for courageous conversations. Now, the courageous conversations is just what we call Brave Angel style debate. It's just our term for it. And so drop the hierarchy. And notice that I prefer just in these debates here, we got John Hikari over here who's an immigration attorney, but I'm going to refer to him as John, right? Because, well, he's my friend too, but also we're on first name. So students don't call me Dr. Allen, just call me Joel. But once I become a moderator, you call me Mr. Moderator, okay? Because that's going to happen in just a minute. I'm going to change from Joel into Mr. Moderator. But so drop the hierarchy. We want to just everybody has something to say here. We listen to everybody. Anyone can make a speech. The only hierarchy is Mr. Moderator. So once I hit that gavel over here, I will no longer be Joel. I'll be Mr. Moderator. Okay. And all questions should be addressed to me, to the moderator. So this there's kind of a Brave Angels magic, and part of the magic of Brave Angels is that you don't directly address the speaker. So if I was getting up here and I was giving a speech, can we go to the next slide? Yep, here we are. So if I was giving a speech on how wonderful dogs are, then someone could say, Mr. Moderator, would you please ask the speaker, or could the speaker please explain how dogs could be better than cats? When cats at least are helpful about where they do their private business. So how can dogs be better than cats? Cats are so wonderful that way. So if you want to make that point, you'd make it to me and not to the person. You don't go, hey, cats are clearly better than dogs. So, all right. So next one. And another part of our values is rather than clapping, I don't know why they do this with Brave Angels, but I'll ask someone someday. You tap. So you tap. Anything you can tap is a way of just expressing appreciation. So when someone gets up and gives a speech and you want to say, yay, that was nice, you tap. So yeah, your seat somewhere like this. Anything. Tap anything. Okay, so the speaker's guidelines, each one has 4 to 5 minutes. 4 to 5 minutes. So each one has, So each one has 4 to 5 minutes and to make their speech, and then afterwards you need to be ready to field 2 questions, and questions shouldn't be no gotcha questions, but just questions of interest. Can you explain this further? Can you give me an example type questions? And so the Brave Angels magic is all of this, and then one other piece to Brave Angels magic, and that is that the Brave Angels magic works when everyone feels like I have the opportunity to listen to you, and I will listen respectfully, and I'll be genuinely curious, and I won't express contempt, and I'll try to understand what you're saying as long as you do the same for me when I speak. And if everybody gets that sense, then it works. That's the magic, okay? So, values, ask all questions with genuine curiosity, no gotcha questions. Express, we already did genuine curiosity. I don't know why I forgot to delete that one. I was going to delete it. And no challenging the speaker about sources. That's, the last one is kind of a weird one, but it just doesn't work in a debate like this to challenge their sources. Like, did you read that in the Barnyard News? Or, you don't challenge sources. It just doesn't work. Okay, again, the resolution, the United States should implement a comprehensive immigration reform that includes a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who meet certain criteria, including residency duration and lack of serious criminal activity. All right, is everyone ready to go? Ready to initiate the debate? Okay, and I will be Mr. Moderator now, okay? So let's go to the next slide. There we are. So Audrey is going to give our first speech. Audrey is, I just talked to her right before we started, and she was doing her last minute editing. Well, I pulled it up to the front because I needed to start with a pro. You always start with pro.
Oh,
so,
I didn't realize I was pro.
And you're...
Okay. Sorry, just right here,
yep.
Is that okay?
Yep, and you just push that right there.
Okay. So hi, I'm Audrey. I am a student here at DWU. So our immigration system needs a significant overhaul. We need immigration for continued innovation in our country, as well as to sustain our workforce as they fill labor-intensive jobs that are difficult to fill, often decreasing wait times and completion in areas of construction or similar projects. I've seen firsthand how ineffective the system can be. My parents' neighbors back home are a family from El Salvador, with the parents, both parents here on work visas, and the kids attend the local schools. When the government shut down due to COVID, their work visas ended up in a backlog, and they had to end up going back home to El Salvador for a few months until the backlogs were resolved. They own their home in the US and were not able to live here during an already difficult time. Our system has a history of failure, letting people immigrate to the US who wish harm upon us from the inside. Although that's a small percentage, those people went through the legal channels to get here, but at least we knew who they were and we had them on the record books. My biggest concern with immigration is that immigrants should use the legal processes to become citizens to work in the U.S., to be citizens or work in the U.S., but the government needs to at least know who's here, who they are, where they're at. This resolution in regard to undocumented immigrants is in regard to undocumented immigrants. So undocumented immigrants is defined as foreign-born people who reside in the country without the legal right to do so, often entering without inspection or overstaying a visa, meaning they did not use the legal channels, already breaking U.S. laws. Setting up a channel for illegal residing immigrants is like stating a precedent that our laws don't matter. The previous federal administration created an open border situation that created an influx of immigrants. Although they did not file legal paperwork to come here, due to the open border policy, I don't really know how much I agree that they're here illegally, but displaced due to changes in federal ideology and policy. My thought is if there was like a mobile processing center that could be created to issue like a 2 to 5 year work visa and initiate the required paperwork for permanent placement, those that came to our country during that time would be within a specific time frame be able to comply with getting these visas and then give an opportunity to be on record here, no longer being considered illegal, giving them time to complete the paperwork for transition to be a citizen. I do believe if this were to be done, it should be limited to those that came in that time frame, and anyone that does not comply with the given time frame to complete the paperwork would be at risk of deportation.
Thank you very much. Now, Krista, your teacher had told me that these were going to be nuanced. That was a very nuanced speech. So to just summarize it, as I understood, you were saying that you do approve, you do want, or you do like the idea of there being some amnesty pathway as long as what?
For those that came in during the last administration's open border policy.
Okay.
I don't think it should continue to move forward, because then that would just be people breaking
Yes.
our immigration laws.
Right, that makes perfect sense. Okay, great. Any questions for Audrey? Any questions for Audrey? Yes, John.
Somebody else can go first.
Any other questions for Audrey? Good.
One of the pillars of our immigration law is the notion of inspection. You can't receive almost any immigration benefit in the United States unless you entered legally the first time. So you're proposing this. You're proposing this cure, offering some path to status for millions of people who entered. Presumably, you're speaking about the Biden administration. These people entered without inspection. So by granting them this, you would essentially be overturning the legislative requirement of inspection. And so, how would you address that? This massive overhaul of a legal requirement inspection. Inspection means entering legally when you first came here. How would you address that, which is essentially a massive overhaul of how our immigration law has existed since about 1954?
I don't know that I completely understand what you're asking. Like, so even though they had an open border ideology, we still had a law in place requiring inspection for them to come across the border. Is that what you mean?
So pretty much right now at the foundation.
For people.
The foundation of our immigration law it pivots on this notion of inspection, right? There are most benefits in the United States you are ineligible for unless you had inspection. We're actually very, very forgiving of overstays, of violations of status, but inspection we punish very harshly, and that's codified. That's not an executive branch decision. That's not an executive order. That's written by Congress in the Immigration Nationality Act. And so this blanket opportunity to cure their status for millions of people who entered illegally during the Biden administration would essentially erode or completely erase that foundational element of our immigration law. And are we comfortable with that, or do you understand that? That's more of my question.
And I don't think I know enough information about it to speak on that.
And you know what, Audrey, in Braver Angel style debates, it's perfectly fine to go, haven't thought through that, you know, whatever. That's perfect. That works great. It's not a problem. Any other questions? Yep. Okay.
There was a comprehensive, and I'm going to be hoarse, there was a comprehensive bill that was bipartisan that was defeated before this last election.
Right.
So it's very complicated. It's hard to answer what he was asking, I believe, with a simple answer, because it was a very involved piece of legislation.
Right, and I don't ever think it even came to a vote, but it was proposed, so. Okay, so we have two, so that was not a question, right? That was more of a comment. Okay, do you have a question, Dave? Oh, I'm sorry. She was talking about at the end of the Biden administration, there was the legal apparatus that was coming together and it was really shot down by President Trump. Before he was president, he said he didn't want to lose that as a campaign issue. So, is that good enough for everybody? Okay. Okay. This is Audrey's second question.
My perception is that you make a distinction between a temporary situation which could be fixed and a long-term situation about which I'm not sure what your point of view is. So I would be interested in any comments you have about what the longer-term policy should be.
So I guess longer term they need to overhaul the system that we already have in place longer term. But I was making a distinction between temporary situation resolution versus long-term. I did not address the long-term as I don't know how to fix our broken system that we already have.
And in Brave Angels, that's a perfectly legitimate way to end your speech. Thank you. The chair thanks you for an excellent beginning speech, Audrey, and sorry I didn't give you more of a heads up on that. Okay, our second speech, our con speech, is going to be presented by Kip Cordes. So Kip, come and present a con speech, or you can just do it right there with that mic.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Kip Cordes. I'm from Wall, South Dakota. I'm a sophomore here majoring in communications, and I'm also on the wrestling team. In my multicultural communications class, we've been discussing and debating the topic of immigration the last few weeks. So I guess, just like he said, I'm just giving my clear opinion on this topic, and I'm in no way an expert. I support a legal process to citizenship that emphasizes the importance of national security, which is implemented from our government. Our immigration process is very important because it protects American jobs, safeguards our communities, and the process is imperative to our nation as it sustains so many American jobs and communities. It's a strict and rigid process that should identify and deport immigrants who are in the U.S. committing crimes and polluting our country, yet award immigrants who are here working hard, contributing to our communities, and overall seeking a new and better life. I think for immigrants in our country who are seeking good and contributing to our country, they would benefit from a streamlined process. And I just say this because recently, I guess you could say I've had a softened heart on the topic, just because I personally had the opportunity to become close with a teammate who was here on a student visa. You know, I brought him back home for Thanksgiving. We rode horses on my place, had a great time. He's my good buddy now. And he's just explained to me how hard it is, how hard the process is, and how long it is. And so I'm talking about people who are here on student and work visas. The whole opportunity to see the other side of immigration from my teammate's side has made me feel much more empathetic for the good young men and women who are here going to school, working hard, and deserve the gift to live in, or the gift and privilege to live in our great nation. Because of this, I would suggest a merit-based point system based on things like work experience, family, education skills, family in the sense of needing to feed their children, things like that, community contributions, which are all, I would say, ethical prosperities. On average, it takes 9 months to several years to get a permanent green card. And I think for people providing ethical prosperities such as these, they would benefit from a process that is shortened. I think those who meet this threshold should be rewarded for what they bring to our country and should be able to move more quickly through the process, while also the immigrants who are here just simply polluting our country, they still need to be identified. I think the system would also be a great way of weeding out immigrants in this country out who cannot provide work experience, skills, education, and just overall don't seek to be virtuous citizens here. Many people such as this are polluting our nation. I have a firm belief that we still need secure borders, and when entering our country, it should be done legally and professionally. The whole immigration process must be guided by security and legality from our government, secure borders, and economic prosperities. I believe the balance of security and reform from a merit-based point system. With this balance, there can be a fair and effective immigration system that benefits the American people and people yearning to live new lives as Americans. It can also benefit our economy to ensure a brighter future for our great nation. And I'm, like I said, just on this idea to reform, in simple words, just rewarding people who want their kids to have opportunities that they never had. Just to make you all aware, I'm in no way an expert on this again, but thank you all for listening. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, Kip. That was wonderful. I see Mike back there. Dr. Mike Catalano. There you go.
So I'll try to follow protocol here. So, Mr. Moderator, could you ask the speaker, first a comment, yeah, I would be in favor of creating a way to get people through the process more quickly. So I'm wondering if the speaker would be in favor of prioritizing federal funds to hire more judges and lawyers so that people who are have pending cases, whether it's an asylum case or a application for green card or wherever they're at in the process, if they would be in favor of prioritizing federal funds to hire more judges to expedite those processes.
I would 100% support that, just because I know the reason why the process can be so slow at times is because the courts are so backed up. I mean, they're so backed up that people literally can't go into the courthouse. So, in simple words, yes, I completely am behind that.
Great. Yes. And Julie, for a second question.
Yes, Mr. Moderator. My question for the speaker is sort of two parts. One, he talked about how people that were not criminals or who had not broken laws here, and I know that was part of the resolution, so I'm wondering, the resolution said a certain level of crimes, so I'm curious about what the speaker might think would be a crime, I don't know about a crime, but breaking a law. You know, if they get a speeding ticket, do they need to go back? Versus, obviously, if they, rob some store, one of those things. And then the other part, my second part to my question has to do with, he mentioned the idea of people who cannot contribute to our country in a good way, and I'm curious about what he means by that.
So two good questions for you. Kip, how do you feel about this?
For the second one, I would just say in contributing, people who want their kids to go to the local schools, who want to work local jobs, who want to go to things like the school board and things like that, and just overall want to be a part of the community. That's what I would mean by contributing. And can you repeat the first one again?
The resolution said a certain level of crime. So what?
I would kind of agree with what you said. Like, I think things like jaywalking and a speed ticket, like, I don't think those are things that need to be shown on the merit-based point system. But like felonies and things like that, robbing someone, murder, things like that, I think those are 100% things that should kind of divide the virtuous from the non-virtuous.
So a common sense approach.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, great. Two good questions. Great
Thank
speech. So the chair thanks Kip for a wonderful speech number two. I have to explain two things. One is our next speaker is Rick Snedeker, and he has a hearing impairment. And so if you would text your questions to Rick, that would be helpful for him so he can read them on his phone. And secondly, I have to apologize to Carter. I don't know what happened to your Carter, but TBD are your initials, just so you know. That's you. And I don't know if you're speaking pro or con. Are you con or pro? Nuanced. Con, okay. Good. Well, that part I got right. That part I got right. Sorry about that. So, Rick, come and give us our third speech, or pro speech from Rick Snedeker. Yep, you can sure do.
I need a mic.
Yeah.
I don't do this very often, so if you can't hear me or if I knock you off the back seats, let me know. My name is Rick Snedeker. I'm a retired journalist and author. You could say I'm an immigrant myself, having moved to Mitchell from Saudi Arabia in 2014. But explaining that would take a while. So instead, tonight I'm explaining why I support a government pardon known as amnesty for eligible and documented immigrants. This includes dreamers, which are the children of immigrants, And these kids have often been here for their whole lives. They know nothing else but the United States. I begin with a guy named Oscar Handlin. He's an American historian who you've probably never heard of. I never had. And he wrote this one passage that's relevant to now and tonight. And he said, "Once I thought to write a history of immigrants in America, but then I discovered that immigrants were the history of America." And I think that's a true statement. Our American DNA, our fundamental character as a unique people is immigrant. It has been forever. The promise of the American dream is even encapsulated in our original national motto, E pluribus unum, which means out of many, one. To the founders, it meant out of many colonies, one nation. But over time, it has come to mean also that out of a multitude of immigrants, we have become one distinct people. However, Congress, in the throes of anti-communist, anti-atheist hysteria in 1956 America, officially replaced that motto with a new one, "In God We Trust," which is a perfectly fine motto. But the founders, who are all children of the secularizing Enlightenment, envisioned a highly diverse nation governed not by religion, but by reason. A Babel of exiles who sought safety, equal opportunity, and non-sectarian governance. Immigrants have powered America's singular innovative success throughout its history, from Albert Einstein to Henry Kissinger, and today to Elon Musk, and including millions upon millions of others. Immigrants and immigration in our country should be cherished and nurtured, not demonized as they are now by the current administration. For years, Donald Trump has succeeded in convincing half the population into believing that non-white immigrants are, he quotes, animals and vermin, and that immigration is an invasion of the U.S. and a poisoning of our blood, which are all slurs from a horrific Nazi past we were hoping would one day be bygone. But immigration is really not an invasion, even though far too many villains still sneak over the border. It's far more a constant replenishment of the American ideal, with continuous new blood, new genes, and new hope. It's reasonable, I think, to expect that most immigrants, like people everywhere, are good folks, simply trying to improve their lives and those of their families. To retain immigration's many blessings, Congress must adequately fund and effectively fix, not further degrade, our failing system. A rejuvenated system would better control border crossings, vet asylum seekers, welcome eligible immigrants into the country legally, stem the inflow of drugs, and identify and swiftly deport those who would do us harm. Studies routinely show that immigrants, documented or otherwise, are far less likely to commit crimes than existing citizens, that they accept essential jobs Americans often refuse, pay taxes, create thriving communities, and often develop more abiding respect and gratitude for the American Republic than existing citizens. And it should be a moral imperative to not send dreamers back to their parents' country of origin, to environments completely alien to them. All long-term, undocumented residents with clean criminal records and steady jobs, I believe, deserve a shot at amnesty, permanent residency, and a path to U.S. citizenship. The country and the economy urgently need them. Of course, they did once illegally enter the country, but the reason they became marooned in the wilderness of our derelict immigration system and were able to start building a future here, often for decades, is our fault, not theirs. Deportation in this context seems not to bend toward justice. Despite a new administration in Washington, our immigration system remains profoundly broken, no matter how many immigrants are now being forcibly deported without due process.
Great.
Thank you.
I almost clapped. I almost clapped. That's a no-no in Braver Angels country. Okay, let's hear a question for Rick this evening, and you can just address the question to me, and being close, I can communicate it to him. So it's hard from a distance. So you can either text it to him or just give me the question as you would normally. So any questions for Rick's speech? Yes, Kitty. So this is the only time you have to call me Mr. Moderator. So.
Mr. Moderator, my question to the speaker is, would he agree that there are indeed people in our country that should not be here and not be subject to amnesty?
Good question. Rick, the question is, would you agree that there are some people that should not be allowed to enter in and receive amnesty?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The problem isn't with immigrants, I don't think. It's with the system. And the reason there's so many immigrants have been pouring into the country is not their fault, really. They're going to do it anyways. They want to come to America. But the system is so, broken. They can just pour in, and nothing happens once they get here. A lot of times, they just let them back out into society. So yes, they've got to have a system to identify the people that are going to cause problems.
Great. Another question for Rick? Thank you. Other questions? Anybody have a question? Yes. Oh, yeah, right.
Only if no one else. Mr. Moderator, I got it this time. One of the foundational principles of our immigration law is the concept of protecting the American workforce. Are we comfortable with, in a mass amnesty situation, as we've just described, are we comfortable with a massive influx of now eligible workers in the workforce, which increases supply, which, as we know, will drive wages down for Americans? Is that something we're comfortable with?
So his question is,
heard that.
yeah, okay.
My understanding, and I'm no expert, is that a lot of the jobs that these people coming in are taking, even when they come in masses, are needed. Americans don't want them. And so the idea that they may be taking over jobs that Americans could have, I think is not really borne out by the statistics. But absolutely, I think if people are coming into the country and they are taking people's jobs, that's Americans' jobs, that's a problem. But, my uncle was a farmer in California years ago, and he brought in Mexican Mexican laborers under a specific program. And he absolutely needed those people because he couldn't find anybody else to, pick his crops, his cherries and his peaches. And so, but I agree. I don't want anybody losing their job over immigration.
I think they called it the Braceros program, probably, right? Wouldn't that be?
It depends on how modern it was.
Yeah.
The modern program would have been H-2A.
Okay, right. Yeah.
The Bracero.
Braceros program for a number of years back, yeah. So great. Thank you, Rick. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. That's wonderful. And so now Joe is going to give a con speech. So come on, Joe, and give us your con job. You can use that or...
Sounds good. My name is Joel Tharaldson. I'm a sophomore here at DWU, and today I'll be talking about my opinion on immigration in the United States. I believe that immigration is good for the U.S. and think it helps create a diverse community for people to share cultures and learn new things about each other. I also believe that immigration must be legal and structural as well. I think having a strict border security and policy is a must to maintain and preserve American safety and privacy and ensure that we don't let just anybody into our beloved country. Some immigrants come to work and live the life they've always dreamed of, and some come to do harm in the U.S. It should be in our key interest in protecting as many citizens as possible, and one way to do so is securing our border. Some issues that can come up are job competition. Illegal immigrants can take jobs that could otherwise go to legal residents, potentially lowering wages or displacing native workers, especially in low-skilled labor markets. It can cause security risks. Critics argue that not having proper vetting for illegal immigrants can create national security concerns, as individuals may enter the country without being properly screened. it is also unlawful. Immigration laws are in place for a reason, and critics say that allowing illegal immigration undermines the rule of law, making it harder to control and regulate immigration. There are concerns about the potential spread of diseases, as immigrants may not have access to proper health care or may not undergo health screenings. And there are financial costs to the local government that may incur significant costs related to law enforcement, education, and health care for illegal immigrants, particularly in areas with large immigrant populations. Also, illegal employment. Some argue that illegal immigrants are often employed in the black market, leading to wage theft, exploitation, and unfair labor practices. In conclusion, I think that immigration is good for the U.S. as long as it is done so legally and organized. That's all I got.
Great. Thank you very much. Questions, Mike? I'm a little bit hobbling these days, but I'll get there eventually.
So, Mr. Moderator, I'm wondering if the speaker would favor stronger enforcement on employers to address some of the problems that he mentions as far as the black market in labor and wage theft, and even the loss of jobs among Americans. It seems that the employers have a role in creating that problem, so I'm just wondering if the speaker would favor additional enforcement along those lines.
Thank you for the question. As I understand it, employers rarely get penalized. Isn't that correct? Yeah. Yeah, they rarely do. They don't do it. Okay. So employers, what about employers that are not penalized?
I believe there can be some support there, but I don't think that's where the main issue is. I think the main issue is letting immigrants into the country that are not here to do good for our country.
Second question for our speaker. Yes, Keith.
Mr. Moderator, I was wondering if this speaker, and I heard the other speaker say kind of the same thing, and I'm wondering if they could give some examples to help me understand when they say that we should not allow immigrants that are coming to intend harm. What do they mean by intending harm here?
Joe, what do you think?
When you say that, I guess I think of like criminal acts. That's one thing that comes to mind, and also like terrorist groups. That's a pretty big thing that comes to my mind, I guess. So, yeah.
That makes two questions. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
Appreciate your being here. And Jackson Childs is up next. Jackson, come and give us your thoughts.
Is this on?
That one should work.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jackson Childs. I am from Mitchell, South Dakota, so locally grown here. Tonight I'm going to talk about the importance of creating fair and effective pathway for new citizenship for undocumented. For this discussion, I was kind of just thrown into the fire Friday at class. Got back from a golf tournament, and they're like, "You're talking about immigration." And I was like, "Great, let's think about my past experiences," which is nothing. So while I was at that golf tournament, I actually played around with a colleague at this point. He was from South Africa, and during our round, we were both playing bad, which kind of goes to show golf. But he kind of talked about how hard the visa system is and how it was going to be difficult for him to retain citizenship in America. So I was like, perfect, I can talk about that tonight. So when I was researching for this discussion, I came across 3 challenges that seemed pretty, very important in this process. So one would be the complex process that I was just kind of talking about. In this process, there's multiple fees and background checks, which all of you probably know already. The fees for someone moving to this country can be insurmountable. The fees can range from any price range, and you need to pay them to retain your citizenship here. Next, I came across the prior visa holdings. So as Kip kind of noted, this could take anywhere from 9 months to 5 years without any guarantee on citizenship and really any explanation of why you're getting rejected or accepted. So in this case, with the young man that I played with, he kind of said that in order for him to retain citizenship in America, he was going to have to get his work visa, which would last, now this could be incorrect, but I believe 3 to 5 years. After that, he believed that he would be married for 3 years and then would retain his citizenship. So to jump through all those hoops and have that figured out at the age of 21 is probably not the easiest thing. And that goes to show you how hard it is to become a U.S. citizen. And lastly, as most of my other classmates have talked about, criminal activity. So this is definitely a barrier to naturalization in America. As we kind of talked about in class, I know everyone in here probably watches the news, some in different ways than others. Some watch politics. I tend to watch ESPN. So I don't know if anybody's seen lately, but immigrants were even on ESPN lately. If you maybe saw, there was some NFL players that got robbed, and that was by immigrants. So that kind of paints the picture in a bad, negative way towards immigrants in America. So that's how I see it. I'm not here to tell you that there's a definite way to fix this, but while doing my research, I did look up how immigrants are contributing to our society. So one thing that we all have in common is we're at Dakota Wesleyan trying to achieve an education. So I was like, well, 35% of immigrants hold a bachelor's degree or higher. And compared to the rest of America, it's almost flat with 35% of the rest of Americans. So then I was like, well, everybody needs workers at this time. 60% of immigrants are working, which is a little more than Americans as a whole. So you can see that immigrants are bringing to the table a little bit more than the rest of society, essentially. So as I just noted, I don't have a solution personally. Kip and I talked about merit-based system and the pros and cons of that, but I think anything that's going to streamline this process would be a benefit to anybody that is involved.
Thank you very much, Jackson. Let's go. Good speech. That's a great question for Jackson from Nico. Let me get back to you, Nico, here so people online can hear you. And by the way, Nico just became an American citizen about 2 months ago, so let's give a hand of applause to Nico.
Mr. Moderator, I'm kind of piggybacking off of Dr. Catalano's question earlier, because most of you were talking about like streamlining the process, and it took about, student to now citizen took me about 10 years. So streamlining the process, he had talked about, more workforce. I'm curious to see if the speaker knows about what kind of information is requested in the process, because streamlining can happen with more employees, but it can also happen with maybe requesting less information. And so just an insight would be, part of a marriage-based green card application is you gotta give any financial records, had about 7 vials of blood taken from me. So like, are there any specific, things you can think of that you would leave out of that process and why? And then kind of the second question would be, you talked about marriage-based visa as well, which is what I did. Do you think it's wise to allow, someone that's on a marriage-based visa to already become a citizen just 1 year into marriage? Because right now, it would have to be 3, if John corrects me on that. Yep. So do you think it's wise?
Okay, so to summarize the question.
First question is, you talk about streamlining the process. What kind of information would you say that's not necessary to keep in the process? And the second question is, do you think it's wise to give out a citizenship 1 year after getting married?
So to give out citizenship, because right now it's 3 years. You have to be married for 3 years. Yeah. So and if you don't, you can,
I'm good.
You don't have to answer everything if you don't feel.
Yeah, good. So I would kind of agree that the blood sample, 7 vials, is probably a little excessive. I think general information is obviously important. A little bit of background history, maybe even a background check. I don't know how that works on a national level. I'm very uneducated in that regard. But I think more so, getting towards the second question, I think the 3 year, it's a minimum, correct? I think that is kind of a hard topic just because obviously marriage is a very diverse thing, whatever you want to call it. So that can get a little difficult. So I think 3 years is probably more on the safe side. 1 year maybe is a little bit minimalistic, but that's just from a college point of view.
Thank you very much, Jackson. That was excellent. So yes, question number 2.
Somebody raise their hand, but I don't want
Okay, yeah, yes, Tom, Dr. Dean.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Moderator, not Speaker. Okay. I wonder if our speaker could comment on the whole asylum process, because it seems to me that has really gummed up the whole process. That if, as I understand it, anyone who appears at the border and asks for asylum is automatically entitled to a hearing, but those hearings are so overloaded that there's a several-year delay, so they are basically released, and even when their hearing comes up, a large portion of them are denied. In fact, I think and yet, just because they're in danger in the country where they come from does not seem to me to be a justification for citizenship. I mean, it's you can make a compassion argument, certainly, but most of the things the speakers have raised are other issues about how they can contribute to our country.
So the fact that people can come here and they can claim amnesty, and if they can show that they're in real danger in their home country, that then they can become an asylum, or they can claim asylum status. Is that right, John?
Yeah, I mean, the asylum application initiates at the border.
Right, okay, right.
Approval of asylum results in a green card.
Right.
Green card results in path citizenship.
Right. Okay, so, yeah.
No, I'm very unfamiliar with the circumstances of this. Based off what you put forward, I think that the system is obviously very overrun. And I know that I've had teammates in the past that are trying to get into hearings and that kind of thing just to gather American status, whether it's visas, or even I had a teammate that couldn't get like transcript stuff turned over to American stuff, to English, I guess would be the correct term. But I just know that coming here, regardless of what you're doing, is difficult. So I think if things are overrun, then we need to find a way to streamline that.
Thank you, Jackson, very much. We appreciate that as well. Good job. And now TBD is coming. Carter Brown is making his way over to give his con speech. So, Carter, my apologies again.
All good.
Yeah.
Hello, my name's Carter Brown. I'm a sophomore here at DW. I play baseball, and I'm from Sergeant Bluff, Iowa. Today, I just want to address an issue that impacts our economy, national security, and social stability. The presence of illegal immigrants in the United States. While immigration has always been a cornerstone of our nation's history, illegal immigration undermines the rule of law, burdens taxpayers, and strains public services. If we want a fair and secure society, we must take action by enforcing laws and ensuring that those who enter our country do so legally. Illegal immigration comes at a significant cost. Economically, American taxpayers bear the financial burden of social services such as healthcare, education, and welfare. For those who have not contributed legally to the system, public schools are facing overcrowding. Hospitals experience an increase in demand for free medical care, and housing markets are impacted. Socially, unchecked illegal immigration leads to job competition, particularly for lower-income American workers who struggle to find fair-paying employment. This is not about race or ethnicity, but it's about fairness. When businesses hire illegal workers at lower wages, it undercuts American workers and devalues legal employment. National security is also at risk. Without proper evaluation, we have no way of knowing backgrounds of those crossing our borders. While many come seeking a better life, criminal elements, drug traffickers, and human smugglers exploit our open border policies. Enforcing deportation for those who enter illegally is not about cruelty, it is about upholding the law and ensuring safety for all Americans. A solution to this would be deporting those who are here illegally, especially individuals who are have criminal records, while ensuring a fair legal process. Strengthening border security through physical barriers, technology, and increased personnel to prevent future illegal crossings. Holding employers accountable for hiring undocumented workers to remove the incentive for illegal immigration, and streamlining the legal immigration process so that those who want to contribute to our country have a fair and legal path to do so. America is a nation of laws, and those laws must be upheld. Allowing illegal immigration to continue unchecked disrespects those who follow the legal process and threatens our economic and national stability. By enforcing deportation laws and creating a system that prioritizes legal immigration, we can protect American jobs, strengthen national security, and ensure a fair system for all, for the respect of our nation's laws and future generations. Thank you.
So we have questions for Carter today.
Mr. Moderator, has the speaker considered that we actually have a workforce shortage? I can speak from an economic development standpoint that we actually, in Mitchell and in South Dakota and the United States, we have a workforce shortage right now. And you look at companies locally like Trail King, who have a lot of Hispanic workers who would suffer if they were not able to receive these workers from places like Mexico or Latin American countries. And a lot of farmers and places like that, they have these workers who will do jobs that a lot of American citizens don't want to do. So I'm just wondering if you've considered, or if the speaker has considered that, and what the effects of, decreasing these workers in our workforce.
Good question. Carter, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think obviously workers Americans don't want to do the tough jobs, but I think having documentation is important. So I think, I don't know, I just think having documentation and then you'll be fine.
Okay, documented probably there. Yes, okay. Tama?
Mr. Moderator, my question is going to be something about DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. So my question is, when the speaker mentions the criminals coming over, what I see, and I want to ask if you see this anywhere or hear this anywhere, when I watch TV and there is a woman raped or killed by an illegal immigrant, it is all over the national news for weeks. But we Americans all know of and watch Caucasian Americans rape, murder, and kill also. But that doesn't get the media interest. So my question is, does the speaker see a view of where there is an assumption that illegal immigrants are killing, raping, and murdering more than American citizens?
So there might be a increased emphasis on illegal crime. Yes. So any thoughts about that, Carter?
I would say there's definitely speculation out there that illegal immigrants are probably more tended to be committing crimes and raping people, but obviously there's Americans that do that too. It's just a matter of if you have a good soul or not, I guess.
Okay, great. Was that two questions? Yes, that was two. Thank you, Carter. Appreciate it very much. And Rachel is going to come and give a pro speech. Rachel?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Rachel, and I am an international student in the United States for an academic year. I do not know a lot about immigration laws and how they work, so I might not be able to answer a lot of your questions, but I will try. However, as a United Kingdom citizen from Northern Ireland, I can offer a perspective that blends both experiences of living in a country with its own unique set of immigration challenges and an understanding of broader international issues. While immigration in the UK is often discussed as a different context, the situation in the United States resonates with me on several levels. I appreciate the notion of the United States, like the UK, as a country built on immigration. The diverse makeup of American society, where people from all corners of the world have come seeking better opportunities, reminds me of our own history in the UK, especially in Northern Ireland, where our population has been shaped by immigration, whether it's an influx of people from mainland Britain or those seeking refuge from conflict elsewhere. It's undeniable that immigration has helped shape both our economy and our culture, creating vibrant communities that contribute to the fabric of society. However, there is disadvantages. For example, bad immigration laws can look like an example in Northern Ireland, where immigrants were allowed in the country without enough housing to home them, and the government is now putting immigrants into hotels, which is costing the government millions of pounds. Moving forward, from my standpoint, the concept of offering a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants in the US seems not only compassionate but pragmatic. As someone who has witnessed the benefits of immigration firsthand, both in Northern Ireland's evolving communities and across the UK, I can understand the argument that creating a clear and just route to citizenship can enable people to fully contribute to society. Many undocumented immigrants, such as those who have lived in the US for years, are already embedded in the workforce and in the communities. They are not illegals, but are individuals who have worked hard and built lives in a country that in many ways has become their home. In the UK, we've seen both the challenges and rewards of managing migration. For instance, during the Brexit debate, immigration was a central issue. Many argued that tighter control was necessary, while others highlighted the economic and social benefits brought by migrants in sectors like healthcare, agriculture, and education. It's a delicate balance, one that requires a fair approach with the security of the population in mind, but also recognising the inherent value of people who contribute positively to society. In Northern Ireland, there's a history of embracing individuals from different backgrounds. In the past, we have experienced both challenges and growth by having communities from various ethnicities and nationalities. The concept of fair immigration system, whether in the US or the UK, can contribute to a more cohesive and prosperous society. For a country like the United States, which is still working through complex social issues, offering a clear pathway to citizenship to those who have lived there for years seems like a way forward to foster integration, improve security, and maintain the value of justice and opportunity. Of course, this must come with responsible safeguards, just as in the UK, where people expect the system to be fair and protect the rights of citizens, which allows newcomers a fair chance to contribute. The US should ensure that any reforms are robust and ensure that individuals seeking citizenship meet reasonable criteria, including no history or serious criminal activity. This protects society while allowing those who are contributing positively to settle into the communities that they have helped build. In conclusion, as someone from Northern Ireland, I would say that comprehensive immigration reform in the United States that offers a pathway to citizenship is not just an opportunity for a fresh start for those already living here, but most importantly, it is a chance for America to live up to its ideals of freedom, fairness, and opportunity. Just as we in the UK have learned from our own immigration debates, creating a system that offers clarity and fairness can strengthen communities, build trust, and improve the overall well-being of society. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel, for that wonderful debate. Nico has a question for her. Sorry. I sprained my ankle, so it's a little bit...
It's unfortunate that you're the last. I would have asked this question whoever is last, but actually I think it's really good that you are because you have like an outside perspective as well. But Mr. Moderator, my question is this. We've heard 7 speakers talk about that the system is broken, but not a lot to talk about what is broken. So I'm curious to hear, because in my opinion, you have laws, and then you have the execution of those laws. So I'm curious to hear for the speaker if she thinks that the laws are broken, because you're obviously advocating for a pathway to citizenship, or is the execution of those laws broken, or is it both?
Very good question. The laws or execution or both? What would you say, Rachel?
It's a very jam-packed question. I think I don't know an awful lot about like the laws or like what's allowed or whatever, but I think following from one of the boys had mentioned that like I think it's a lot to do with the actual laws. I think people who are coming to immigrate into America, they're going to do so if it's illegal or not, but I think it's up to the laws to stop that or control that or make that right or wrong. I don't think that can really be in our control until the laws are set in place.
Thank you, Rachel. That was a very, very good question, and I will get to your question in just a moment. But John, as I was saying, we have an immigration attorney with us. Would you mind wrapping things up, John? And just kind of give us like what kind of bring things together and the main, because I know we've had some. John was interviewed for an hour on South Dakota Public Broadcasting, and I was sitting in the parking lot at lunch eating, listening to John. So here.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to ask the speaker, Mr. Moderator, I would like to ask the speaker, she mentioned the benefits of immigration and the positive things, and I would be curious in her experience in Northern Ireland what those positive things are, and I think it would be good and healthy for our audience to hear those things.
Yes, the positives about immigration in
Yeah,
England and Northern Ireland.
So in Northern Ireland, it's a very culturally diverse country. There's lots of ethnicities, lots of nationalities, and I think it's important because, as mentioned, like with agriculture, like construction, healthcare, education, like there's so many benefits that come with it, and it opens up a lot of perspectives to understand different people, and more cultural awareness. For example, me coming here, although I'm only here for a year, I think like it's opened my horizon to so many cultural benefits of America that we don't have at home, or some people at home won't understand. So when I explain to friends and family at home, like even them understanding, it's so different because you're just getting a whole unique perspective of different people and different ways of life.
Thank you very much, Rachel. That was fantastic. And we're glad you're here. Is that 2 questions already? Yes. I think she got 2 questions, we promise. So, okay. Before John comes, I'm really pleased that John was here. He drove all the way from Sioux Falls to be here with us. So thank you, John. And it's a perfect way because none of us knows the law that well, and he knows it very, very well. And we've already had numerous conversations, and I've learned a lot from John. But before John comes, I just want to mention that if you're interested in keeping up to date with what the McGovern Center is doing, I've got a sign-up sheet, and I send out updates. And then we got flyers for the 2 coming events. One is April 7th, and that's going to be the panel discussion that got postponed. We postponed it to April 7th. And so we have kind of 2 pro, 2 con voices in terms of deportation. Ben Reddy, who works in John Thune's office, is the Southeast Director of John Thune's office in Sioux Falls, and really knows policy well. He's just a real policy wonk kind of guy. He's a very, very bright guy. So Bill will be coming, Ben will be coming, and then Mary Hogan is, she's a representative for ICE. She does public relations for ICE, and so she'll be coming and speaking. The other is Tanisa Islam, who is kind of a civil rights person in Sioux Falls. She's an attorney. She's also an immigration attorney and is the executive director for South Dakota Voices for Peace and Justice. And I think you'll love hearing Tanisa. And then John. So John's going to be our panel speaker next week. And then the following week, which is, and you got flyers back there, so please stop and pick up a flyer. The following week is April 14th, and that's going to be Voices of Immigrants. And so we'll have a number of people that have recently come through the immigration process. And so that should be really interesting to hear their stories. And so very much looking forward to that. So John, come and kind of give us your wrap-up thoughts. That's tough. Is this it there? Or this one? Either one. This is good.
Am I going to get double if I...
Yeah, let me turn the rest.
Okay, I will try to, although I guarantee it won't happen, I'll do my best to respect the 4 to 5 minutes. I talk very fast. I talk very fast naturally, and then I'm going to try to cram a lot of information into a really, really quick speech here. To give you some background, I attended University of Nebraska College of Law. I graduated in 2015 with my JD. I took the South Dakota bar exam, so I was admitted to the State Bar of South Dakota in 2015 by examination, and then admitted to the Nebraska State Bar in 2016 by motion. I spent 7 years as a practicing alien side immigration attorney, which meant I represented aliens in their applications for employment-based immigration, non-immigrant statuses, green card applications, both family-based and employment-based, naturalization, defense from deportation, which is called removal work, and everything in between. So I spent my entire legal career defending aliens from ICE. So I am not, I do not work for ICE. I am on the good side of I'm on the good team. So I think a lot of, one time I was at a gas station and I was dressed like this, and the woman asked me what I do, and I was like, oh, I'm an immigration attorney, and she said, for or against? So I've always clarified that I never worked for ICE. Okay, so one of the things that I always like to talk about when I'm involved in immigration discussions is this phrase that both sides of the aisle say, which is, we have to fix our broken system. My response to that is always, great, what's broken with it? What's broken about it? Specifically, articulate it to me. And one of two things happens. Either they can't articulate it to me, or they articulate something to me that actually is not broken about the system. It's a misunderstanding of the system, or it is the system working as intended and there actually is no alternative. And so I really, really like to, there's a really, really fun thought experiment you can do, and I'd like to do it quickly now because we have a big group. And I think we're a little cozier in here than we were at the church when we were real spread out. So there's a fun thought experiment you can do, which is where I'm going to give you the premise. I'm going to say our immigration laws are actually pretty common sense. And our immigration laws as written are not broken. If we pretend this room is our country, all right? This room is our country. We need to start figuring out who we're going to let into this room and who we're not going to let into this room, and whom after we let them in, we want to kick out. And if we are going to let them in, how long we're going to let them in for. So let's do it right now. Anybody, this is our country, this is our room. Anybody willing to raise your hand? What's a type of person that we don't want to let in? Okay, so people who have a history of violating controlled substances laws. Is that fair? Excellent. That's in the INA. That's in the INA. 237A 6C, I think. It's there, right? How about else? Anybody else want to rattle one off? Yeah. Okay. So we might only want to let people in through that door, right? Because we don't have anybody to monitor that window. We don't know who's coming in there, right? So we should probably try to funnel people to that door where we can have the biggest dude in here. We'll have Cole screen them when they come in, right? Excellent. What else? What are some other? Just give me a couple more. It's a fun thought experiment. How about people that are, yeah. Okay, we do want to let them in or don't? We do let them in. Interesting, right? And that's very good. And there's actually, there's something called the Cuban Adjustment Act. And then it used to be the wet foot, dry foot policy. And Obama actually repealed the wet foot, dry foot policy. The wet foot, dry foot policy says, however you get out of Cuba, we don't care. If you can get a foot on Florida, we'll get you a green card, right? So we wanted people to escape communism and come here. Ironically, Obama removed the wet foot, dry foot policy, which now in order to benefit under the Cuban Adjustment Act, you have to come here legally first, and then you can get a green card. But that's in there, right? So people escaping communism, people escaping our opposing, countries that have our opposing political ideologies. Excellent. One more. Let's do one more. We want to let them in or don't? So we want to let them in. So we want to be a beacon of light and hope in the world, right? People escaping war-torn countries or problems in their home, we have that, refugee and asylum, right? A big one is, what if someone's hacking a lung on their way in, right? They probably have tuberculosis. We got enough nursing majors in here, they could probably ping the symptoms for tuberculosis, right? We probably don't want to let that person in, because what's going to happen, right, is that they're going to get all of us sick and everyone in this room may die. That's there. It's the first one. 212A is, we do not allow aliens in. Inadmissible aliens are aliens who have a disease of public health, a communicable disease of public health significance. We could do this all day. And what you would find is that almost every single reason why we should let someone in, or reason why we should not let someone in, or after we've let someone in, should we kick them out, reasons for, are all already found in our laws. Our laws are actually very, very common sense. So, The question is, I stand up here all snarky saying that, but clearly we have a problem, right? We have a massive problem in this country. We have millions of people who are here without status. What do we do about it? What's the solution to it? And I want to remind all of you that I was an alien side attorney. I fought ICE. ICE was my opponent every single time. I sprung hundreds of clients from deportation. I have gotten hundreds of green cards in my career. I just want to be clear about that. But what is the solution to, A, the millions of people that are here without status, right? And without status is another thing we need to clarify, right? What does that mean? They came here illegally, they EWI'd, entered without inspection. Did they violate their status, meaning they came for Disney World and started working, right? Did they overstay, right? Which means they came as a student and never went home. What does undocumented immigrant mean, right? And so the reality is it looks different for pretty much every single alien. Undocumented and undocumented immigrant is a massive euphemism. Really, it's an alien without status. And an alien without status looks different for every single one. So we have millions of people here. While the Obama administration tried to put a Band-Aid on it with, if you recall, there was the DREAM Act. I've heard a couple people mention the word dreamers, right? I don't like to use the word dreamers because the DREAM Act failed. The DREAM Act died in Congress, right? But the Obama administration was facing a massive crisis of millions of children about to get their driver's license or about to enter the workforce, and they couldn't. They couldn't because their parents brought them here when they were children before they remembered anything. They don't speak usually Spanish because they're usually from a contiguous land border country, right, with us. They don't speak Spanish. They don't find out that they're not American until they go to the DMV and the worker asks them for their birth certificate, right? And their parents say, well, here's your birth certificate from Durango or Chihuahua and not, an American state. So they're not a US citizen. Or they go to enter the workforce. Well, the Obama administration, after the DREAM Act failed in Congress, they tried to put a Band-Aid on it. They issued DACA, which was Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Well, guess what? Deferred action, that action is just deportation. It was a promise from the Obama administration not to deport you, right? And what the executive giveth, the executive can taketh away. And it was the first thing Trump did in 2016 was end DACA, right? So the point is, what do we do about the millions of people that are here without status? Do we offer them a path to status? And if so, what does that look like? And my last point that I want to make, because I have a million more things I can say, is that our current immigration system is based on 4 main categories. 1, the rights of Americans to be with their loved ones. That's the one we're all familiar with. You get what's the movie with Ryan Reynolds, The Proposal? You guys ever seen that movie, right? So the rights of Americans to be with their loved ones. That's marriage-based, family-based green cards. Spouses, children, siblings, parents of U.S. citizens, right? Then we have employment-based green cards. So if there's an employer that's willing to sponsor you, the core of that immigration law is built around protecting the American workforce. For almost any employment-based immigration, you have to show, the employer has to show that there's no American ready, willing, and able and available to do the work that they want to petition an alien to do, right? So now we have the rights of Americans to be with their loved ones. We have protecting the American workforce. Then we have refugee and asylum, right, which we kind of all vaguely understand. And then we have the diversity lottery, which is so minuscule it doesn't matter, but it's essentially, it's straight up a lottery system. If you're from a country whose population is underrepresented in the US, you can literally pay $20. Well, it was $20 as of 2022 when I was practicing last. So it might have gone up now, but you can submit your name to a lottery, and if your name's selected, you get a green card. Those 4 categories that I just articulated result in like a fraction of a percentage of the world actually being eligible to get status under our current system. So the question we have to ask ourselves is that okay with us? I mean, those seem like pretty reasonable categories, right? Do we want to let everyone in the world in? And I know Trump was quoted saying this, and I know it's apparently a Hitler quote as well, so he got in trouble for it, but we either have a country or we don't. That was a Trump quote, which apparently was historically a Hitler quote, but that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Are we okay with those categories? Are they pretty common sense to us, right? And if they are common sense to us, then what changes are we comfortable making? And if we're talking about giving status to millions of people who are here, are we comfortable with essentially overhauling this system that, as we discussed, it kind of seemed pretty common sense?
Can you describe 245I?
Yeah, sure. So when you get a green card, when you apply for a green card here in the United States, I mean, you're not abroad in your home country applying at a U.S. embassy for an immigrant visa, which results in a green card. If you're physically here, it's called adjustment of status. Most aliens adjust status under 245A or 245C. That's Immigration and Nationality Act, INA 245A or 245C. There was a law back in the late 90s, because our government was facing a very similar situation then. Millions of people here without status. They don't have status. They can't get Social Security numbers, which means they can't get driver's licenses. They can't get insurance, which we as a society have a vested interest in our drivers being licensed and our drivers being insured. Those are only two small problems, right? But our government in the late 90s was facing the exact problem we're facing now. And their solution for it was a provision of law, which is now, it's codified under 245I, which essentially says, we will give you a path to status. If you otherwise qualify for one of our 4 categories, meaning family-based, employment-based, refugee asylum, diversity lottery, if you otherwise are eligible under one of those 4 categories, but the only thing stopping you is the fact that you EWI'd, you entered without inspection, which was that first, I think I was grilling Audrey, unfortunately, on it, right? Our immigration laws pivoted on this notion of inspection. Did you come here legally the first time, right? If the only thing preventing you from getting status is the fact that you entered this country illegally, we will forgive it. The government says we will look the other way if you pay us $1,000. You give us $1,000 of a fine, we'll look the other way on your EWI, and we'll give you a green card. To me, that is the greatest piece of immigration legislation ever written, because it appeased both sides. The right got their pound of flesh, their rule of law, like, hey, you violated the law, you need to be punished, right? Which is what we kind of understand. If you get a speeding ticket, you usually just pay a fine, right? So you pay a fine, and the left got their humanitarian of, we want to help people come to this country, we want to offer them a path to status. I think 245I could be modernized. We've discussed this. I think you can scale up the fee for inflation. Heck, you could jack it up to $5,000. And if you want to appease the right, you could even say use it to pay for the wall. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that could be a bargaining chip, right? But I think 245I is an amazing piece of legislation, and it sunset in April of 2001. Congress didn't want people to just say, hey, I know now that I can EWI and just pay $1,000, right? So they sunset it in April 2001. If you were currently here before that date and you filed before that date, you can get a green card if you pay $1,000.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate that.
Do you want to?
And you don't have to address this to me. You can address it directly.
I can. I want the microphone.
Mike, we've got a few questions here. First, you haven't asked a question yet.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm wondering, I'm confused about people who cross the border and ask for asylum. Do they not, is the process they go through not considered inspection?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I don't want to bore you with it, but it's actually, I was focusing on inspection. Because it was simple. But the statute actually says inspected and admitted or paroled. And when the asylum officer, which is under the asylum officers are, at the border, they're under CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. Within the interior, they're under United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. But at the border, if the CBP officer determines that they have a credible fear, you probably all heard the credible fear interview. If the alien has a credible fear of persecution in their home country, they will be paroled into the country. That parole satisfies the same inspection box. So it's a good question to ask, because if an immigration attorney listens to this, they're probably like, inspected or paroled. So I'm impressed that you caught that.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, this is very interesting tonight. Thank you for being here. But, okay, so President Trump, he's probably our biggest recruiter now for immigration. He's got the gold card. So basically, he's saying, hey, we'll let you come into the United States for $5 million, okay? So why discriminate? So people that work in, for farmers or meatpacking plants or picking fruits, vegetables, why can't they get a green card or a silver card for $500? Because it's all relative. He wants all these billionaires coming in and oligarchs, and plus H-1B visas, they don't seem to be too hard to get, do they? From Silicon Valley, all these billionaires are bringing in soft tech engineers and computer analysts and things like that, and they're paying them probably half the cost as what Americans graduating from our universities are getting, engineering jobs.
So my understanding is your first one is, why don't we offer a less expensive money-based path, which essentially, to me, you just described 245I. Which is, I agree with 100%, is the best piece of legislation ever written, right? So in your situation that you just described, you're saying if Trump's going to let people pay $5 million for a green card, why wouldn't we let an alien currently without status who's working at a farm pay a fine and get an employment-based green card? That's what 245I is, and that's beautiful. I agree with that 100%. Well, after 5 years, of course. Well, and that's good. Let's address that, because I think one of the things we heard throughout here was the system is broken and backlogged and slow, right? But not to advocate for the government, because, but the government would say that we want the system to have built-in slowdown. You know, what is it in NASCAR where you got to slow down a little bit, you know? Built-in slowdowns, because we want to give these aliens the chance to screw up. And it sounds bad, but if you become a citizen, you're no longer deportable, right? So if somebody becomes a citizen, you're no longer deportable. If you offer citizenship after a year, to me, and this is what and I kind of agree with the logic of it at least, and this is the government would argue, if you make somebody wait 5 years, they're more likely to show their true colors, right? Are they going to commit certain crimes or make themselves deportable? Whereas if you only make them wait a year, all they have to do is behave for a year. Before then, they're no longer deportable. So if they commit a heinous crime, you cannot deport them, right? And they get to vote, so they get to participate in our political process. I'm not advocating for this. I'm saying that's the logic of why there are delays intentionally built into the system. One of the, Nico had mentioned 7 vials of blood, and I think Jackson had brought up that seemed a little bit absurd, but that's just that's 212A in action. We're saying that we don't want aliens, this is what our law says, we don't want aliens who have communicable diseases of public health significance to be able to come to and remain in the United States. And so we have to check in on that periodically. Does this alien have that? Which is why there are health checks at various points throughout the process. So I'm not personally advocating for everything I just said. I'm just saying that's going to be the government's argument as to why maybe there is a logical reason for delays and speed bumps built into the system. Well, I think you had two. You had a two-part. You had the money. Right, but I'm sorry, to go back to your original things you said. You said the money one, and then you had a second one, which I was jotting down before I got distracted. What was the second part?
Like if you're crime-free and you're working, you have a family, you have
No, that was different, but okay.
Education. I mean, like, have different immigration boards in your local communities, so you don't have to go through the, judges and wait for years. Every community like Mitchell should have like an immigration board to interview their,
Well, once again, that's a massive overhaul and a massive. It's codified. I mean, our Constitution itself says that immigration is a matter of federal law. The Supreme Court has historically ruled that it's a matter of federal law, and the states are precluded from being involved in immigration. So I'm not disagreeing with your idea, but I'm just saying currently that would be it would be a constitutional amendment level overhaul of the laws.
I'm committed to keeping this to an hour and a half. Nico's had his hand up. Nico, do you want to ask your question? Yeah. Since we get special favors since you're the newest American in the room.
I actually am unsure if it still exists. If you want to, if it still exists, explain to them what J1 visa is, because everyone has talked about why don't farmers, why can't they just hire people to help them? That's already exists.
Yeah, so I think H2A is the better example, but there's J programs, which are exchange programs, and that's usually things like hotels and theme parks, right? So if a young American, I'll just use Linda because she's one of my players, right? Maybe a Wildwater West in Sioux Falls, right? Let's say Wildwater West wants to bring in a couple foreign workers because they need seasonal help. They can set up a J program where they get some seasonal help, and then in exchange, they send some Americans abroad to do seasonal work abroad. That's the J program. But the H1A, H2A, and H2B programs are what you're describing. So farmers can say, hey, I have seasonal need for these workers for this amount of labor. It's an employer sponsored program. So the employers have to submit the I-129, which starts the process to get H-2A and H-2B alien workers. H-2A is seasonal agricultural, H-2B is seasonal non-agricultural. And yeah, that system already exists. So we can fill needs with foreign labor currently. Now, maybe do we need to adjust the numbers? Certainly that can be a discussion, but these things exist already.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. So remember to sign up in the back if you want to get my email. And then if you want a McGovern bumper sticker, everybody want a bumper? Hey, John, that was just incredible. Oh, yeah. There's just so much to pack in the